people who are. Yeah, okay. All right. All right. So am I coming through now that I paused the VPN? Testing, testing. Tell me in the chat if I am coming through. So I want to keep talking about Vietnam if it's not properly streaming. Yeah. Okay. So now, all right. So it was the VPN. All right. Yeah. 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 So it was the VPN that blocked it. Um, okay. Do me a favor. Race car. Is that all just like none of it came through? Like I should just start over again? Like how much of that like just didn't come through? Like did the whole thing just not happen? Tell me in the comments. Like up until I shut it off. Yeah, none of it came through. Okay. All right. Okay. Uh all right. So I guess I will just have to like edit this video or something, or there's gonna be like 15 minutes of dead air. Um okay. All right, I see. Yeah, so it was the VPN then. Okay, I gotcha. All right. All right. So sorry about that. So VPNs, it's tricky sometimes. Like sometimes there's no problem, and then other times it'll block things. It's a little random. Okay, so this is my last night in Vietnam, and I am very sad actually to be leaving. I It's really grown on me. I've been here almost a month and a half. I've been here since February 10th. I've been to Hanoi, to Sapa, Hue, Da Nang, Hoi An, and now I'm in Ho Chi Minh City, formerly known as Saigon. I'm still only in Saigon. I must say, I took a trip up the Mekong Delta today, and yeah, I mean, you can't help but think of every Vietnam War movie you ever saw. So there were kids doing, I guess they had a high school assignment here because this happened to me twice. I had kids come up to interview me. That was their assignment, to interview like non-Vietnamese people about what they thought of Vietnam. And they asked me what I liked best. And without hesitation, I said the people. I really, really love the people. They're so gentle and humble and open and kind. It's kind of amazing, but it's also very upsetting because a lot of what I've done here has been to visit war sites, to visit the sites of atrocities that were committed against the Vietnamese, not just by Americans, also by the French. The Hoa Lo prison that we know better as the Hanoi Hilton, because the American prisoners were held there during the Vietnam War. That was built by the French. The French tortured and murdered the Vietnamese for decades in that prison before we ever got there. Going to the site of the My Lai massacre, which honestly, I had a passing knowledge of it. I didn't understand the extent of the atrocities. Like I thought they just went in and killed everybody. I mean, they like assaulted children, like, you know, SA kind of assault. Like just once you've spent time with the Vietnamese people, to imagine treating these kind, uh, very humble people, these peace loving people, to come and do that to them. You'll be even more upset if you ever come here. Once you spend time in the country and you look at those things, they're even more upsetting than they were before, because you can really paint a picture of what that would be like for American soldiers to drop into a village like My Lai and do something like that to these people. It is also a story of the triumph of humanity. Um, there's kind of a Taoist lesson in Vietnamese history. Um, the water wears down the rock. You know, the reed that bends survives. The rigidity breaks. When you spend time with these people, it's kind of incredible to think that they had the strength, the just strength and determination of will to do what they did. And the American War was just the end of it. Like they had already built a lot of these networks of tunnels and trails to overthrow the French. Um, a lot of this was like young girls out in the jungle, humping gear around for the troops. Just the strength. They reinforced bicycle handlebars to move ammunition and weapons to the troops. Just incredible that people who are so fundamentally gentle as a cultural characteristic could find that strength within themselves. And I think it's connected. I think that kindness is also what gave them that strength. And I think the very strong sense of family and community that they have as a culture probably did a lot to hold them together through all of that. Um, Also, of course, I spoke to many of them about what their thoughts are about the American war. And universally, now understand, especially when you get into the south of the country, you do have people who are not happy that the communists won, whose families fought for the South. I had an old lady say to me, DM was the best president they ever had. um Remember, like, the South was getting very westernized and just, very much like Iran, very much like Cuba. You had a certain class of people who benefited from that system, who are nostalgic for it. But one thing I find is universal is everyone sees Ho Chi Minh, no matter what their views are on how the war resolved itself. They see him as a patriot and as a national hero, and they're all proud in the end that the Vietnamese people expelled the colonizers. Even people who are not happy that the communists won, they still see them as legitimate. They still see them as legitimately representing the Vietnamese people. And they can't take away from them that they kicked out the colonizers, that they were the ones who finally got the colonizers off their backs. So it's pretty complicated. But what's most amazing is their compassion towards the Americans. I went to the War Remnants Museum here, which was extremely upsetting. They had pictures there that we don't really see, like of American troops posing with human heads. They don't really, even when they talk about atrocities committed by American troops, they don't really show us the extent of savagery that took place here. Um, but every museum I've been to that discussed this, every tour guide I've gone with to a war site, they make a point of portraying the American soldiers as victims. They really go out of their way to say, these kids are 18. Their government sent them here to kill Vietnamese people for no reason. That is just remarkable when you're from a country that goes so far out of its way to vilify people who didn't do anything to us, like the Iranians. And here they are. They had a genocidal war. And yes, that is the appropriate term for what we did in Vietnam, without any question. We committed a genocide against these people that they're still suffering from the lingering after effects of to this day, particularly in regards to Agent Orange. And they go out of their way to find compassion for the Americans who came here and did this to them, to see them as victims. I asked an old Viet Cong veteran this question, and that was his take on it. To the extent that at the War Remnants Museum, they spend a lot of time on Agent Orange, which has such devastating effects on the genome. that you have birth defects. They're experiencing birth defects now into the fourth generation from Agent Orange. There's a good portion of the museum that's dedicated to the legacy of Agent Orange and what it's done to families and just horrible, debilitating conditions that people lived with, conjoined twins and encephalitis, just horrible, horrible things. Um, and they made a point of talking about the American soldiers who also were affected by Agent Orange. Can you imagine? Like, would we do that? Would we go out of our way to talk about how, oh, the people who dropped the Agent Orange, they got sick too, but they do. And what they've said, and I've heard this again and again when I've asked about this, they've said that they philosophically don't believe in holding on to things, that you can't change the past. You have to move forward. You don't forget, but you have to forgive and you have to move on. And honestly, I think it's because they look at things that way that their society is so incredibly cohesive and healthy, uh, particularly for a society that suffered from that level of trauma. Um, and this is something else. You'll see when I am finally able to put together some of these videos. Um, the country is very haunted, but I don't mean that in the sense that they're broken or injured. I don't mean it that way. But I keep quoting that line. I think I'm paraphrasing it a little bit, but the past isn't gone. It isn't even past. You feel that very much in Vietnam, that legacy of the colonial atrocities that were committed against the Vietnamese. It's in every city. It's on every corner. I mean, it's very woven into the fabric of their society, of their cultural memory. It's not something that's ever far from their minds, but not in a way that it's debilitating, in a way that, if anything, it's strengthening because they're so proud that they got rid of these people. They're so proud of the strength and they're so happy. Again, even people who don't necessarily like the government, and I will say most people do, from as far as I could tell. I did, and some anti-communists will say, well, they're not going to tell you. No, some people did tell me, but the impression I get is, no, most people think the government's doing a pretty good job. They speak openly about the fact that it was very bad for a while after the war, and they feel they mismanaged the economy. But generally, they seem to feel they're doing a good job now. Um, it is amazing to see how much they have been able to overcome that legacy, even as they honor that legacy. And when you come down to the South, in particular, that past surrounds you in the form of amputees. You see a lot of amputees down here, man. There's still a lot of war victims. And you know what else you see? You see people who are too young to have fought in the war who have birth defects, man. That's Agent Orange. It's not even something that would have occurred to me at first until I went to the museum and they got into it. I bought some souvenirs today from a place where they train people who have birth defects from Agent Orange to make these handicrafts to sell to people, which they then use to finance training more people. This is, you go to the museum and you learn about this, about how they have, just millions of acres of forest that are still infected. And you say, well, as a country, how do we not? There are ways to treat it. It would cost billions and billions of dollars. Why don't we do that? Because we're a nation of criminals and gangsters. You also, when you get into the story of the Vietnamese from their point of view, like describing that story, and even just getting into the history of it, their struggle against imperial powers and against the United States, it's very much every story we like to tell ourselves in movies. It's the Star Wars thing. It's the big evil empire and the scrappy rebels. The American soldiers, in a derogatory way, used to say they were wearing pajamas. You know what they were actually wearing? Those are farm clothes, because they were freaking farmers. The black loose fitting clothes, that's what that is. That's farm clothes. That's clothes that farmers wear. That's why they're running around in sandals with these loose fitting black clothing. That's farm gear. And they beat this power with really unlimited resources that uh, dropped bombs on them that are just inconceivable. Double what they dropped during World War II in the Pacific, just on this little territory, man. And they just would not quit. And it's amazing, a story of how people can be kind and strong at the same time. That is what the Vietnamese are. But George Lucas expressly said that Star Wars was an allegory for the Vietnam War. Now, the reactionary douchebags who lose it every time they release a new Star Trek show, um, they like to ignore that. But yeah, man, like that's what these stories were meant to represent. They were meant to represent the struggle against colonialism and imperialism. We see ourselves in those stories, but we're the empire. I mean, clearly, we're the empire. I mean, what could be more the story of scrappy rebels defeating an evil empire than the story of Vietnam? And seeing all this at a moment when we're now committing a whole new set of war crimes and atrocities against the civilian population of Iran, basically firebombing the civilian population. It's very depressing. And it definitely, I'm certainly not the only one who sympathizes with Iran in that fight. I think that's pretty much the entire world. But you look at what Iran is doing today, and they're kind of holding the line for against an out of control empire in the way that the Vietnamese did during their struggle against this empire. You know what else they always go out of their way to express appreciation for? The Americans who protested. They talk a lot about Kent State when you take these tours about the war. Like, they're very appreciative that so many Americans went out and marched. Being from a country that's just so childish and spiteful and vicious and nasty, um, it's an amazing experience to be among healthy people, honestly, to be among people who are not like that. And just overall, getting away from the war, you look at the whole conversation in America about, like, everyone knows there's a problem. Everyone knows Americans are having a problem, that there's a psychological crisis, an emotional crisis, an anxiety crisis. And they want to drug it out of people because the medical industry makes a lot of money from selling you drugs and selling you treatments and sending you to therapy. It's really not that fucking complicated. It is a sick society that is set up to make people miserable. Without community and without family, without meaningful connections, people are going to be mentally unwell. And runaway capitalism, like what you have in the United States, leads to that result. You can't have an all against all kind of an economic philosophy and maintain the ties between people in your society. This isn't just Vietnam. This is Asia. Everywhere you go in Asia, something you will immediately notice if you're from America. I can't even say the West, because Italy, Spain, a lot of these countries still have some sense of community and family, but we sure as hell don't. You come over here to Asia, And yo, man, you walk by the general store. Basically, they live above the general store, and the whole family is like downstairs in the store eating and hanging out together all day. I've talked to a lot of people in Asia about this. And yeah, in Vietnam, it's kind of a cultural standard that the family eats together 3 times a day. No matter what you're doing, you come together and you eat together. You know what they don't have a lot of here? Prozac. It's really, really, really not that complicated. Um, no healthy society would produce that many people on psychoactive drugs or who feel they need to be on psychoactive drugs. Now, I'm not saying this is utopia. I'm sure there are problems here that I don't have the cultural knowledge to pick up on. And sure, of course, there are problems anywhere you go. But Vietnam, I can definitely add to the list of places I've gone that are better than the US, which is 100% of places that I've gone. And I say that not because necessarily the material conditions are always better. They aren't always better everywhere that I've been. There are places where the poor are poorer than they are in the United States. But you know what? I've never been any place else where you could see like 3 mentally ill people in obvious distress walking around on the street. You know why? Because I've never been any place else where no one would try to take care of them. That makes America the worst country I've ever been to, because I've never been to a country that would just leave people to fend for themselves who clearly don't even know where they are. No place else I have ever been is like that. And that comes back on itself. That is why Americans are so sad and mentally ill. We are not, as a species, meant to live in isolation like that, feeling like everyone next to you is a potential competitor for resources. It's making people nuts, man. And you can see it when you go pretty much anywhere that's not like that. People don't have these kinds of issues. They don't have these kinds of problems. So for all of these reasons, I'm I'm gonna really miss Vietnam. I was here for so long that it really got under my skin. Like it really got this place really touched me. Like it really got into my heart, and that really is the people. The people here are just amazing, just amazing. Like that mix of just they're so open hearted. You come and you start talking to a Vietnamese person, and they're right there like they've known you all their lives. They're just so warm, like not at all guarded in any way. And you look at the just power within that kindness and gentleness. That's a great lesson for all of us, because I think a lot of us, we think that it's one or the other. You could be the kind of person that's gonna make the Americans, jump onto the helicopter on the roof of the embassy in Saigon to try to escape from your forces, or you could be kind. We tend to think you can't be both. These people are both. Within their kindness, there's incredible strength, like very few people in the world have ever known. So does anybody have any questions? I am going to Cambodia tomorrow. In my continuing tour of atrocities. I'm going to be going, of course, to the killing fields and S-21, the converted school that became a jail and a torture dungeon under the Khmer Rouge. And I'll go to the Royal Palace too for a little balance. And then 2 weeks from today, I go to China. I'm getting there, and this is going to be a very very interesting time to be in China, I'm sure. From what I'm reading about the oil situation, that might be the best place in the world to be over the over the next couple of months. Vietnam, on the other hand, sadly, is particularly vulnerable to having oil cut off from the Strait of Hormuz. They are already canceling flights for April. The Vietnamese government has ordered people who can work from home to work from home. Like they've got a 30-day oil supply without getting oil through the Strait of Hormuz. So I hope they're going to be okay here. God knows these people have been through enough. They don't need any more. They seem to be thriving. They seem to be putting together a great country. And most people here, again, even people who might feel that the wrong side won in the war, and those people do exist, especially in the South, they still are very proud of this government because it's their government. It's still their government. It's not a bunch of French people or a bunch of Americans, or for that matter, Chinese who were here for 1,000 years telling them what to do. They're very proud of it being their country. And one other point that has really touched me, um, they're very proud that they have not been at war since 1979. They bring that up again and again, that they are a peaceful country that has not been at war after they had a border skirmish with China, after they kicked Pol Pot out of Cambodia. And that's it. And they're very, very proud of that. And if you're coming from America, fuck yeah, it's such a difference. It's such a difference to be among people who are proud of peace and not proud of their capacity to make war and to make more widows, orphans, and graveyards full of victims. I will definitely miss it here. I hope I get to come back at some point. All right, so let me see. Do any of you have any questions before I sign off? By the way, a lot of you, probably most of you, are Due Dissidents fans. Yeah, man, I got 3 hours sleep because today was my day to go see the Coochie tunnels, the old Viet Cong tunnels. I also shot a gun for the first time today, and there is video. Very first time in my life I ever shot a gun. They had like a firing range there at the old Viet Cong base there. But yeah, man, I got 3 hours sleep last night because we did the show, and then the tour started 7:30, and it was 12 hours. Okay, so any questions, guys? Before, because I know that's why I wanted to do this now. I know literally as soon as my head hits the pillow, I'm out. No? No questions? All right. It is not a chore to do it. It is a great pleasure. I keep having people asking me, like, why did I do this? I tell them, well, I have a channel on YouTube where a lot of our people are very curious about these countries that have communist governments. So I wanted to go so I could firsthand, I don't claim any expertise. All I can tell you is what I experienced. What I have experienced is people here are pretty fucking happy. There's a lot of smiling people and laughing children. And they're not just all of a sudden putting on an act when the white guy comes around the corner. I promise you, it's a pretty happy society. Mastermind Hour, how was your first shoot? I mean, honestly, so like you buy 30 bullets, you got 30 shots. It's not really enough to settle into it. And also it's not because they don't want people breaking their shoulder. So you're not really shooting like it's mounted. So you're shooting it on a mount. So you're not getting that kickback. So it's kind of a watered down shooting experience. It was kind of interesting. It was interesting. Is Vietnamese beer good? It's actually very good. Yeah, they have Saigon beer. There's a Hanoi brand beer. The cheap local beer that everyone drinks is Tiger. They're all pretty good. They're all actually pretty good. I had 3 of them today. No, I am not drunk, really. You know what else I had today? Okay, so they do a lot of these like liquors with like animals in them. So like cobras are a big thing. I took a shot off one of those jars of liquor with the cobra in it. Wasn't bad. Wasn't bad. It was all right. Let's see. Anything else? Did I sample Be Ahoy? Yes, I did. Yeah, it was good. It was good. Yeah, I haven't. None of their beers that I've tried were bad. None of them were bad. Um, oh, what sparked my interest in this part of the world? I think if you have the opportunity, particularly given that I professionally talk about politics and culture. All right, I just again. So I think it should probably be okay again, right? Um yeah, I feel I have a responsibility as somebody who talks about politics and culture for a living to see as much as I can see. And I knew that a lot of people who watch the show are very curious about these parts of the world, and because of, their responsibilities, they can't take a trip here. So, I mean, that's a big part of why I started this channel too, because I can't be dropping these videos on Due Dissident all the time. We have to cover the current events. But yeah, I I wanted to see so that I could develop an informed opinion. And also, given that America seems to be doing so many things wrong, I wanted to see if I went to this part of the world, which is very different from our own, coming off very different cultural traditions, very different histories. I wanted to see if they're doing things right that we're not. And spoiler alert, they are. They are. So I wanted to broaden my horizons and bring that knowledge to my work. And I feel like we owe it to the people who support our work, who watch the show, to do that if we can. I mean, obviously Keaton can't for very good reason, but I can. So I feel like it's part of my job, really. That's why when people say, "Oh, enjoy your vacation," I don't know what they're talking about. Like, this isn't a vacation. I'm exhausted, man. Like it's a cultural. I'm doing an extended 4 month cultural survey. There's been very little of it that I would describe as vacation. Even just the responsibility to shoot everything. Like, I wouldn't do that if I were here to have fun per se, which is not to say it hasn't been like an incredible experience. Of course it has, but it's work. It's work. It's not really play. Um, when you got to pack up every 6 days and move to another city, like I got time to do the show and I got time to see what I'm there to see, and then I'm gone to the next place. Like, I'm not homesick, but one thing I will say is I'm looking forward to not having to get up and go see a major site and film it. That will that will be that will be nice. But I got another month and a half before I get to that. All right, what else we got? Um the most interesting thing I saw in Saigon. Saigon, I loved Saigon. Saigon is is a very romantic city. Saigon is that it's that wild city that you would see in a movie. Like it's just where there's something unexpected around every corner, and it's made up of alleys, and you're jumping over the woman who's making soup on the sidewalk, and the scooter goes past you and you're dodging that, and somehow you get back without breaking anything, and it's just wild, man. It's just wild. You know what video I keep meaning to drop without comment? So, something I wasn't sure if I was going to do before I came here, but in my research I knew was a thing here, is the motorcycle taxis, where you just literally get on the back of a motorcycle and they take you. I did an entire extended video of that in Hanoi where he almost ran over somebody. So you've got a whole POV thing of that. I keep meaning to drop that. It's just going to be that video, no commentary, just what it's like to be on the back of a motorcycle taxi in Hanoi. Okay, this will gladden the heart of the libertarians among us. I love the lack of rules here. I really do. Like, they would never let you do that. Probably in any Western country. That's not even just America. Like, probably no Western country would allow people to throw people on the back of a motorcycle as a livery driver. But I like the assumed risk thing, man. I do. Like, within reason. I mean, it's up to you. Like, if you don't feel safe doing that, nobody clubs you and puts you on the back of a motorcycle. That's up to you if you want to take that risk. For me, I'm good with it. I'm good with the first time I did it, it was a little terrifying, but it was exhilarating too. And you get used to it. Like, you just get used to it after a while. And that's part of my overall view on this part of the world, man. People are more in their bodies, they're more physically confident because you have to be. Like, you can't really be neurotic in a society where everybody rides a motorcycle, you know, like, and really, like, everybody rides a freaking motorcycle. Um, people are just much less uptight, man. They're much more in the world. They're much more hands on. They're much more real. They're not all just caught in a digital headspace. You know what else you really don't see? Even in the coffee houses? Yeah, man, people will look at their phone, and coffee houses are a big thing in Vietnam, particularly in the cities in Hanoi and Saigon. Um, they're not sitting there glued to the phone like that. Mostly they're talking to each other. Now, if I had to come up with a very quick theory about why that is, it probably goes back to that custom of the family sitting together and eating and talking. So it conditions them to socialize when they're eating or drinking. So they don't get into that habit of that being acceptable. That's my it's my quick 5 cent sociology diagnosis. But yeah, they don't really sit there glued to their phone in a cafe the way that we do, where you walk in a Starbucks and everyone's like that. The only people you see like that are the expats who are living here. Um, all right, Russ, you refer to the coffee in Vietnam on DD. What makes it so much better than the coffee at Starbucks? I hate Starbucks. Yeah, I mean, Starbucks is not a good example. The only reason I bring up Starbucks is I'm surprised they have Starbucks because their coffee is so good. So, like, why would you have Starbucks? And somebody told me, sadly, there is some uh worship of America among some people, man. Like, that's there. That's what I was told by Vietnamese I asked about. They said it's the brand. And incredibly, like, I've had Vietnamese people, especially in the countryside, who you tell them how fucked up things are in America, and they're like, really? Like, they don't even really know a lot about it. See, that's another interesting thing when you get this far out. You go to Europe, man, they know everything that's happening in America. It's not like that here. Like, they're not. I got, especially when you go into the more rural areas. Like, yeah, man, they know who Donald Trump is, but they don't it's not taking up space in their head. It's not something they're giving a lot of thought to. You get the sense they only have the vaguest idea of who he is. So they don't really know as much. They're not as intimately involved in our current affairs and our news like that they really understand what's happening in the United States. Or nor are they really all that interested. Like, it doesn't really come up all that much. All right, not being Vietnamese, I will concede there could be things I'm not picking up on. But from what I can see, one of the biggest differences here is they're not ensconced in a media bubble. Like, they don't have a media bubble just that their head is stuck in all day. Like, they're living their lives, man. Now, I say I'm sure there are things I'm not picking up on because they've got to have their own media, which, it's a one-party state. I'm sure it has its spin, its pro-party propaganda. I'm sure that's there. At the same time, I'm pretty observant. it doesn't seem like people spend a lot of time engaging with that kind of media because I haven't seen them do it really. Like I don't see it. Like I don't see like the TVs with their version of a CNN. Like I just don't see anything like that. I don't see them watching things like that. Vietnamese people, man, they'll have like their whole curtains open, hanging out in their living room. You can see what they're doing. I don't see them watching things like that. So I'm pretty confident to say that they're not caught up in that shit the way we are, even in the context of their own news cycles. I think they're living their lives. They have better things to do than that. I think that we are conditioned to engage with that as much as we do because they need to keep us propagandized because how else do you get people to believe they live in the richest country on earth, but we can't afford healthcare? Like you just have to keep them distracted and crazy all the time. And I don't see as much of that here. How much Vietnamese language have you learned? Like zero. And what's interesting is as soon as you come to Thailand, you learn how to say like basically thank you and hello. Same deal. I learned that in Laos. Vietnam, they oh, well, okay. Yeah, you know why that is? I Because I hadn't really thought about it until you just asked me that. They speak English in Vietnam, like much more so than in Laos or in Thailand. So they don't greet you in their native language. They greet you in English, so it doesn't come up. Whereas in Thailand and Laos, especially Laos, they really don't speak English, so they do say thank you and hello in their language, so you pick it up. But no, I haven't learned to. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. I dropped that little short, so I know how to say ghost. Probably not in a way that a Vietnamese person would recognize it as me saying ghost, because if you watch that short, there are 6 tones, and she showed me how ma can be said 6 different ways, and it has 6 different meanings. So what I think is ghost would probably mean rice to them, or cow, or that was another variation. Um, so no, I have not learned any Vietnamese. Um, all right, we got anything else? Yeah, as I mentioned on Due Dissidence, somebody's talking about going home. Uh, yeah, I've never bought a no questions asked refundable ticket in my life. I did this time. I am, man. If it's Mad Max over there, I'm going to Spain. We will see. Um, how many of the people I spoke to spoke English well? A fair amount, because apparently they teach it to them in grammar. That's why in Thailand and Laos they really don't speak English. They don't make it a mandatory subject in school. They do here. So yeah, no, a fair amount. Like in Thailand, even the tour guides, their English is not great. It's all right. It's like passive. They can get by, but they're not great. No, here, like you have a lot of people who speak English fluently. It's not everybody. It's not going to be like your average street vendor can speak fluent English, but a fair number of people speak at least enough English to get by. And there's especially the younger generation, a lot of them speak pretty fluently, actually. Um, all right, what else we got? What else we got? They speak French? Not really. Nah. Come to Chile? I should. Yeah, like I'm sure some older folks can speak French. And you have that French legacy, obviously, in the cuisine. Everybody comments about Vietnam, how great their baking is. They're all the baked goods. Dude, all right, just like uh, obviously I got a thing about the New York pizza. I have the belief you haven't really had it unless you've had it in New York. I found out that that is true of banh mi's, man. Banh mi's are Vietnam's pizza. You might think you had a banh mi, but until you had one in Vietnam, you've never had one. You think you had one, you never actually had one, because the way they make the baguette is key to the whole thing. Yeah, no, they That's one thing they got from 97 years of horrible colonization and murder from the French. Man, these people can bake. Very good pastries, all that stuff they make very well. Oh, and somebody asked, so why is the coffee so good? I don't know, man. I mean, I guess they just have really good soil for it. But yeah, it's like it's really smooth and like no acidity at all. It's just like a perfect, like really smooth cup of coffee. And the condensed milk thing is pretty good. Like the way they make Vietnamese coffee, they won't put sugar in because you don't need it because it's the condensed milk. It's pretty good. Expats, talk to would you live there? The reason I don't think I would actually, I mean, never say never. I do love it here. I really do. The reason I would probably not live in an Asian country is being somebody who is so into culture and theater and that kind of thing. I don't think I'd want to live in a country where I'm never going to learn the language. You're never learning Vietnamese, man. You never learn. I mean, maybe if you're young enough. I'm never learning Vietnamese. It's too complicated. It's a six tone language. It's yeah, like what it would take for me. You could do anything you set your mind to. It's a question of what you're willing to do it. Am I willing to obsess on Vietnamese for like 3 years? That's what it would take for me to speak Vietnamese. I'd have to obsessively pursue speaking Vietnamese for about 3 years to be like passable in Vietnamese. I wouldn't even be fluent. I'd be like passable. Yeah, it's not worth it. So, do I want to move to a country where I'm never going to be able to watch a play and understand what they're saying? Probably not. I mean, that is important to me. It's something I do value. I also, regarding that, I'm pretty sure when I go back, I'm gonna finally do a show in the fall, and that's another thing. Like if I move to a place where I'm never going to speak the language, I also can't produce art that anyone's gonna understand. So I don't think I would live in a country where I couldn't learn the language, which means probably Spanish speaking countries are where I would go if I decide to be an expat because I kind of speak Spanish now well enough that I would become fluent pretty quickly if I lived in a Spanish speaking country. So Spain is probably the top of my list. My only hesitation is I've never been there. They say Spain is pretty. I've never been, like the man said. But I am planning on checking it out. Not too far into the future. Um, did I get an egg tart at KFC yet? Is that a Southeast Asian rite of passage? I didn't know that. There are a lot of KFCs here. I actually didn't I mention that in my very first video, the Bangkok one. I was like, yeah, I kind of want to try KFC, but I never did. And now I'm gonna leave. I bet they have it in Cambodia too. Um, yeah, it's super hard to learn. Um, okay, all right, cool. I guess that is it. Your Spanish in Chile is notoriously intelligible. All right, well, that's a selling point. All right, so yeah, I've got a 7-hour bus ride to Cambodia tomorrow, so I'm gonna go to bed. Thank you all for joining. I'm glad we got this worked out. I will drop the next thing. I haven't really dropped anything because I really want to get out the My Lai footage. That was incredibly powerful thing to experience, and I really want to share that, especially at this moment when we're committing war crimes against Iran. I think it's important to get that out there. So, but it's a lot of footage, so hopefully I'll get it out next week. And in hotels I can do live streams, so I'm going to try to do this, especially in China. I'm going to try to do live streams from there. So thank you all for joining, man. You guys rock. And those of you who are dissidents, See you all on Sunday. Thank you guys.